It's Tuesday, May 6th. I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, and it is a hell of a day to talk ball. And join me to do just that he's been gone for a while, but he is here. He is back. It is my guy, Dalton Del Don. Dalton, what's going on, buddy?
Not much, Harmon. It's been far too long since we've talked ball. I've been enjoying listening to you with all your takes throughout the draft process, but happy to be back. And I can only assume we're all in agreement the 49ers won the offseason.
I don't think that anybody agrees with you on that one. I think you're standing alone on that take, buddy. Especially since every day now, post-draft, I feel like I get a new notification about Brock Purdy's contract that is, I'm so tired of like some of this stuff, man. It's worded like they're very close, but also super far apart. A deal is not imminent, but they are close. Like, what the hell does that even mean? I'm sure as a fan, it's even more exhausting. So, no, I think you're the only one that thinks the 49ers won the offseason, pal.
Yeah, of course, being facetious. Lost a few players, but nothing can bore me more than contract situations. So I'm with you on that one. But hey, at least they are projected to have the easiest schedule next year, and maybe not so many injuries. But yes, I was just being a jokester there. The Niners certainly don't look like winners so far in the offseason.
No, but we are winners today because we have a great show ahead of us here. As Dalton said, I've been yakking the listeners, the viewers' ear off about these prospects for, God knows how long, way too long at this point, talking about these rookies and everything. People are sick of what I've got to say, I'm sure. So we want to hear what Dalton has to say. And as you all know, if you consume Dalton's fantasy rankings, he's an aggressive ranker. He's not afraid to go ahead of consensus, but he actually believes what he says. So for this show, we're basically going to get Dalton's sort of debates against consensus. Not Dalton and I debating. We're going to see where he's most far apart from players in Fantasy Pros' early consensus rankings right now. In segment 1, we're going to talk rookie running backs. In segment 2, we're going to talk pass catchers. And then in segment 3, we're going to talk through some veterans who may or may not have been affected by what's happened over the course of the offseason and certainly in the NFL draft. These are mostly going to be focused through the lens of like redraft rankings, but we'll also give sort of a dynasty spin, as I know many of you out there are in your rookie dynasty drafts right now. But let's waste no more time. Let's get into it here. First segment, Dalton. Let's go through some of your debates versus consensus here, and let's start off with Ashton Jeanty, the Raiders' new running back.
Yeah, surprisingly, his expert consensus rank is the RB4, and that's where I have him. I thought I'd be a little bit more aggressive than the market, but overall, he's around 26th. I'm not sure how accurate that is. I think in most leagues, he's going to go toward the end of the first round. I have him as my 6th overall player. You don't need me to tell you he's a special prospect, finished with the second most rushing yards in FBS history last year, had more rushing yards after contact than any other player had rushing yards. He's short, but he's not small, proven he can handle heavy workloads. Pass protection could be an issue, and it's worth saying that he was facing weaker competition, so maybe some of those broken tackle video game-like numbers need to be regressed. But Jeanty has real receiving upside too, Harmon. You look at the nerd stats, the team per, all that is. He used to be a receiver that converted. So last year, Boise State was just really working for that rushing record. So they force-fed him the carries. I think there's receiving upside. The Raiders did have a historically inept rushing attack last season, but now they're OC Chip Kelly. I think the scheme will be much better, upgraded at quarterback with Geno Smith. Brock Bowers is already a superstar. The team views Jeanty as a quote-unquote perfect player for their offense. The last 5 running backs who were taken in the top 10 of the draft averaged 292 touches as rookies. My guy McCaffrey, question marks, obviously age, bilateral Achilles tendonitis, entering his 9th year in the league. Derrick Henry, 31 years old, 2,400 career carries, 1.29 targets per game last season. So to me, I'm swinging for the fences. Jeanty, my 6th overall player, and half PPR, what we're talking about here. So if anything, I think you could draft him even higher. One could even argue Jeanty is a safer pick than Saquon Barkley coming off a 482 touch season that it was the 10th most in NFL history. Before I let you counter here, I offered our guy Pat Fitz in a dynasty rookie draft my entire 2025 and 2026 draft and Rome Odunze just for the first pick, and Pat declined. Pat declined it.
Wow.
So, and I don't blame him. So yeah, I know. That's. I know I was like nervous to offer it, but I'm like, I bet he doesn't even accept it, and he didn't. And he said, great offer, but I want Jeanty on one of my dynasty teams, and I don't blame him, man. This kid's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, he's going to be awesome. And that is a really aggressive trade. I always struggle when it comes to like the future first and all that, because one, I think projecting multiple years of draft classes out is a little bit nonsense. But I certainly do not know prospects that are currently playing in college like very well. Certain guys, yes, I've heard of, and obviously they're like, it's hard to not know anybody. Like I knew Jeanty was coming for a couple of years, but for the most part, I struggle when it comes to the future picks. But either way, any way you slice it, that's a super aggressive offer for Jeanty, and I'm surprised Pat turned it down. But I get it. Like I want this guy on my teams as well. He's not going to be on any of my dynasty teams just because I don't have the 101 and nobody wants to trade the 101. But man, he's such a fun player. I've mentioned this a lot, but Chip Kelly in his 4 years as head coach, 4th, 7th, 11th, and 5th in rush attempts with his 4 offenses. And he's been an NFL offensive play caller. It's a lot of fun there. And I mean, this offense, like the offensive line, we'll see if any of those rookies they drafted are going to make a day one impact, but I do think the line is good enough to be not like a glaring negative. I think he's just going to get loaded up with volume. So I actually don't have a lot of pushback for you here. I said, even before he was drafted, when it was kind of obvious he was going to go to the Raiders, that I'd be willing to start the running back conversation with him at running back 5. Because in consensus rankings prior to the draft, it was Saquon Barkley, it was Bijan Robinson, it was Jahmyr Gibbs, it was Derrick Henry, and then it was Devon Achane. You could not get me to take Devon Achane over Ashton Jeanty in any scenario. I think I probably still would go Derrick Henry over Ashton Jeanty, and maybe some of the wide receivers, like a CeeDee Lamb type, I think I'd consider. But so you have him at the 6th overall player. Generally, I think that we're in the same range on this one.
Yeah, fading the big dog never ends well, so I certainly can't push back too hard there. And then if you're in full PPR, you probably bump him down for these receivers, toward the back end of the first round. But half PPR, I'm not letting him last past the 6th pick. I'm all in on Jeanty. I think he's going to be a monster right away.
I will say the only maybe concern with him is just that you mentioned Saquon Barkley touched the ball a lot last year. Ashton Jeanty touched the ball an absurd amount at the collegiate level. So he obviously is coming off of a lot of wear and tear just at the college level. That's maybe the one concern you'd have for him, beyond the fact that, of course, we have never seen him play it down in the NFL. But you mentioned it, like when running backs go this high, they get the ball early and often. Ezekiel Elliott was a guy that was going in the first round of fantasy drafts when he was drafted and immediately just moonwalked into a workhorse role. Jeanty probably not in as good of a situation as Zeke walked into just from that offensive line perspective, but he's going to get the ball a lot. Really no argument with him as the 6th overall player. But let's move to the next rookie running back you want to discuss here, which is RJ Harvey, the Denver Broncos 2nd round pick.
Yeah, his ECR right now is RB29. He's my RB16. Highly productive throughout college. Flashed elite burst. He had the most 15-plus yard runs over the last 2 seasons, more than even Jeanty. Highest career EPA per rush among this year's draft class. Strong receiving back, joining a Denver offense with a top 3 offensive line that also led the NFL in checkdown rate last season. I love this most just because Sean Payton loves Harvey. Forget the player. I mean, the Denver backs are just a gold mine. We do need him to hold up in pass protection, but there's an opportunity for a 3-down role. Even if he leaves the field actually on 3rd downs, Javonte Williams ranked 5th in RB targets last year with 70. 55 of those came on 1st and 2nd down. 3rd down gets overrated in the fantasy community. I believe Eckler leads everyone in 3rd down receptions in the past generation. It's like 1 per game. 3rd down is overrated. Denver ranked 4th in RB targets. Sean Payton's track record is awesome, and he loves the guy. He fell in love with Harvey. He's one of the 4 backs he's taken early in his career, and the other 2 of the 3 have finished as top 10 backs as rookies. So I'm all in on Harvey. He's my number 2 rookie back in redraft this year. I'd take him over Hampton. Dynasty, different story. I like Hampton a little more, but for this year, I have him. RB16 is pretty aggressive, and I get it. There's a bit more risk here. But I think Denver, the upside here. I mean, he's come into a better environment than Jeanty is. I mean, Denver was a top 10 scoring offense last year with Bo Nix as a rookie.
No, I'm not this high on RJ Harvey, but I think it's well within the range of outcomes that he makes this look really smart. And one of the things I think that I'm just noodling on this season is how can I get, like, what's the best way to get exposure to this Denver Broncos offense? Because I think this is a unit that a lot of people will be really excited about, but there's not that many players to steam up here. Certainly in the passing game, like, it's still kind of Cortland Sutton and the Funky Bunch there. Like, they drafted Pat Bryant in the third round, who is a very classic, Sean Payton receiver. He's going to do a lot of the things that Devon Vele did, I think, as a big slot for them. I've compared him to Tim Patrick. Like, Evan Ingram is an interesting player to maybe get there. Bo Nix, I actually drafted Bo Nix in our staff mock draft. I think he's a really good kind of arbitrage play if you don't go with the early round quarterback. But Harvey's the guy that it comes to, like, all right, well, this guy is going to lead the backfield in touches. I don't think Audric Estime or Jaleel McLaughlin are going to play considerable roles. They're going to be out there, but you mentioned it. Sean Payton loves this player, and I think RJ Harvey, he's not a great pass protector. That is certainly something to consider, but he's going to catch a lot of screens in this offense, and this offense was one of the most productive screen offenses last year. That's really where I think he could become. That's where he makes you look really smart here, Dalton. Is if he becomes a screen monster. So give me some kind of names if you've got him at running back 16 that you've got maybe a little bit lower than RJ Harvey.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, actually. So I decided to do Mixon ahead of Harvey because he's in such a good situation. But all these other guys have question marks that I think do not match the upside of Harvey. Hubbard, Kenneth Walker, Alvin Kamara. I realize that he's going to get so many touches.
Yeah,
but James Conner, Hampton, David Montgomery, Tony Pollard, Aaron Jones, Dondre Swift, Caleb Johnson. I'm taking Harvey over the upside in his situation as a receiving back. And I mean, Javonte Williams was washed last year, and he was definitely given an opportunity that I think Harvey's going to get. Just not worried about the McLaughlins or Estimes or Bidet. I would take him over Hubbard, Kenneth Walker, Alvin Kamara, James Conner, Hampton, David Montgomery, Pollard, those type of backs.
So again, we'll have more of this conversation on the next episode, actually, because we're going to go over this staff mock draft. Andy's going to be on that show that we just did. I'm sure he won't say anything about you behind your back, Dalton, because he never does that when he's on the show. Andy Behrens, never does that. He's such a good guy, gem of a human. But one thing I noticed in this draft was if you are not aggressive on these rookie running backs, you will regret coming out of your draft, like I did without a few of them here. I went very early running back. Like, I think I doubled up on Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs, which would have been a great pairing last year. So there's no way that won't blow up in my face this year. And then eventually, I ended up with Mixon as well. I went with kind of these older guys that hit last year, and I was very regretful then in the mid rounds. I mean, I'm taking some receiver bets that I like. It's not that I dislike the receiver position. It's just, man, some of those backs, missing out on RJ Harvey, missing out on Amari and Hampton, missing out on the next guy that we're going to talk about here. It stings a little bit. So I think, Dalton, like, you're at running back 16. I bet that by the time we're drafting teams in August, consensus is going to be much closer to you than certainly running back 29. Like, I think I give it like maybe the rest of the week, and he's already up to 25, 22 or something in consensus rankings. I think you will look smarter here on having him this early as you do right now.
Yeah, his final ADP is probably somewhere in the middle. Maybe not as aggressive as me, but it'll certainly climb up from RB 29.
And just give me the quick rundown on sort of why you prefer RJ Harvey to Amari and Hampton.
Just this, Najee Harris. Harris is going to get a workload this year, big time, and maybe Hampton emerges in fantasy playoffs and is a monster. I mean, I have them within a few of each other in the same tier. But Dynasty, Harris probably be gone at possibly this year, right? 1-year deal. And Hampton looks like a monster in a terrific situation on a team that wants to run the ball. And he's drafted higher, pedigree and maybe the better prospects. So I like Hampton long-term, but for this year alone, I just think Najee Harris is just going to be too much of a thorn in Hampton's side.
Yeah, I think if you can put up with an annoying September, I think I would still prefer Amari Hampton just because as much as I'm confident in the Broncos offense, I'm equally as confident in the Chargers offense. I know they're going to want to run the ball a ton. And I just think Hampton is a significantly better talent than RJ Harvey. Obviously, from a fantasy perspective, it's all about opportunity and things of that nature. But man, I think he could be really shredding for you by the time we get to, December. And I think Harvey could be too. And like I said, I don't think Audric Estime and Jaleel McLaughlin are going to be playing big roles, but I don't think they'll be stone zeros. I actually think their workload could sort of be like a combination of those two could kind of be equal to what Najee Harris gives the Chargers over the course of the season. I just think that Harvey is going to get he's going to hit the ground running in September if we're looking at these two situations. Whereas with Hampton, I do think you'll have to put up with an annoying September, but I think that might be worth it by the time we get to the end of the season. But let's go to your next running back here.
Only counters, big difference in offensive lines,
go ahead.
Right, Harmon? Big difference in offensive lines. That's all I throw, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think Denver's got the edge there, but probably still the edge at quarterback for the Los Angeles. Definitely still an edge at quarterback for the Los Angeles Chargers. Better skill position players, I think, for the Chargers as well from a pass catching standpoint. Ladd McConkey's a special player. I like Trey Harris, who they took in the draft. A good fit for them. He stretches the field out. So, I think that it's close between these two. I would probably slightly prefer Hampton this year, and definitely prefer Hampton in your dynasty drafts. This is a player that's interesting. The next guy I want to talk about here is interesting to rank for this year and honestly pretty interesting to rank in dynasty, and that's Caleb Johnson of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I will just give one quick dynasty note here, Dalton, before I toss it to you for the season, because you're ahead of consensus on him. I think you should be. Do you, like, when you're taking a guy, and because you pretty much have to take him in the first round of your rookie dynasty drafts, and I get it, do you get uncomfortable taking a third round running back that early in your dynasty rookie drafts? Because in every draft I've been in so far, that is where he goes. ADP wise, consensus rankings, that's where he's going. Does that bother you at all? Does that make you uncomfortable at that position?
Caleb Johnson fell to me at pick 1.12 in that aforementioned league I talked about.
Okay.
That fits. I had the last pick, humble brag. That's part of the reason Pat didn't take it, maybe because they were later picks. But I took Caleb Johnson. He fell there. Just the fit here is just so nice, is what I'm feeling here. I wanted him to be the new Larry Johnson, how he looked in college, but the 40 times suggests that we probably aren't going to get that. But he just appears to be such a great fit for Arthur Smith's zone scheme. I just think he's going to immediately take Najee Harris's workload, but a fresher legs rookie with more upside because of the unknown. Quarterback situation there is obviously also an unknown, maybe Aaron Rodgers. We all love Jaylen Warren, but, I think he's just going to have a similar workload, and Caleb Johnson's going to replace Najee Harris's touches, and there's some fresh legs upside, and maybe the zone scheme, the speed doesn't matter as much, and he, on the field, it's like it translates in college, and looks pretty good. I just think the projected volume here is pretty safe floor.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm just looking at Fantasy Pros consensus rookie rankings. Caleb Johnson's the 5th highest ranked rookie there, ahead of RJ Harvey.
Wow.
Excuse me, that's at the running back position. My bad. Overall, he's the 9th overall player. So he's ahead of RJ Harvey, who's 11th. He's ahead of Colson Loveland, who's 10th. Much higher drafted wide receivers, obviously Matthew Golden, Luther Burden. He's behind them. Or he's ahead of them. Excuse me. I get it. It's just, I know not everybody's going to be comfortable with that, especially if you're just like an overall draft capital zealot. It's worth noting that maybe in a different draft class would he have gone higher because there was so much depth at the running back position. But if he fell at all, he fell to a great situation and one where I think he's just going to get a ton of volume right away. You've got him at running back 26. I think I want to be even higher than that, especially if Aaron Rodgers signs here. I again could see myself drafting Caleb Johnson ahead of a lot of, not super well-known players. But I could see him ahead of guys like Quinshon Judkins, who were obviously drafted higher, Travion Henderson, who was drafted higher. I could see him going and finishing higher than those type of players this year. Again, if Aaron Rodgers signs, and if we're saying a lot of ifs, and if that offense is pretty functional.
Yeah, I think RB32 is simply too low right now. I'm closer to moving him higher than I am lower. Really, I could argue that my running backs 26 through 16 with RJ Harvey is a big tier there of interchangeable guys featuring a lot of rookies. Love Travion Henderson as well in the aforementioned Hampton. So yes, I think Johnson's only going to creep up even higher throughout summer here, just because he's going to be the goal line guy. He'll get the touchdowns, and obviously that system is just, you can bank on it, assuming they can fix that quarterback position.
Yeah, and just when I look at running back rankings right now, like I said, I probably need to bump rookies up from where I've got them right now, because like it's tough. I do think a guy like Chuba Hubbard is in a better situation than maybe you gave him credit for, behind an awesome offensive line. I know Rico Dowdle and like Trevor Etienne were added, but I think this is still Chuba Hubbard's backfield. Jonathan Brooks, I don't even think plays this year. Then once we're, and I'm always a David Montgomery guy because I think he's just a really good player that's going to score a lot of touchdowns. But once we get to the Alvin Kamara zone, the James Conner zone, like, Tony Pollard, certainly, like I would take Harvey and Caleb Johnson ahead of Tony Pollard, even though Pollard's in a pretty decent situation. But if you don't take those guys, it gets a little dry fast at the Pachecos and Brian Robinsons, and like those guys maybe have paths to better, like out kicking that ADP, but I don't think they have running back one in their range of outcomes, where I think the rookies, if they hit, just the upside of the unknown gives you a little bit of a higher ceiling than maybe some of those veterans.
Yeah, maybe I'm overrating Dowdle, and I could bump Hubbard above Harvey because, I'm into that offense, and Hubbard looked so good last year. So that's absolutely one I could be open to moving ahead. But I'm with you here. That's just a big tier of backs right there. And then once that tier ends, it definitely becomes more of a flyer, guys in committees.
All right, speaking of flyers, let's get to your next few ones here. These are all guys that were drafted on day 3, starting with Jarquez Hunter of the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, I like the fun fact a producer put on here. He's squats 600 pounds and can dunk a ball in cowboy boots at 5'9". Hunter is a fantasy sleeper because he landed with the Rams, Harmon. I mean, Sean McVay loves Kyron Williams, no question, but I think Blake Corum's going to be easy to leap, like immediately. I'm have Hunter ahead of Corum right now. Right, he brings an explosion that's been missing from LA's backfield. McVay called him a man's man, and Kyron Williams, first of all, he was extremely injury prone before last year, and he just doesn't have the explosion that this Hunter does. But I think it might take an injury, but could be one injury away from massive fantasy upside here in the Rams back. Like Blake Corum had the lowest explosive run rate in the NFL last year, 0%. And I keep coming back to that stat where he scored like 99% of his touchdowns in college inside the 3-yard line. I think Hunter's going to immediately pass Corum, and then he's one injury away from a Sean McVay offense that added Devontae Adams. I mean, that's a lot of fantasy upside.
Do you get nervous about Kyron Williams' ranking right now if you're this excited about Jarquez Hunter? And I think Blake Corum's not going to be a stone zero here. And it also stood out to me that Les Snead, I believe, was on the Rich Eisen show and was kind of talking about, we love Kyron, but it might be more of a committee, certainly using words like explosion that they need from the running game, which you just did there. Does that make you nervous about clicking Kyron Williams where he goes right now?
Yeah, he proved me wrong last year. And again, McVay does love Kyron Williams, and it's a great situation. But I don't think I'll be having many Kyron Williams on many of my teams. I have Chase Brown ranked ahead of him. He's my RB12. His consensus is RB11. Won't be an active pick of mine. I much prefer targeting Hunter as a flyer late in drafts.
Okay, next one, we're going to stick in the NFC West. We're going to stick with day 3 running backs. Jordan James, shock of the San Francisco 49ers. Dalton, is Jordan James the next Isaac Guerrero, who was the next Jordan Mason, who was the next Elijah Mitchell?
So Jordan James is a Jordan Mason clone. He's not explosion, but great in pass protection, and that's clearly why Shanahan targeted him when there was some more. He took him over DJ Giddens. So much more explosion. But Shanahan, and obviously Shanahan has a shaky track record with his mid-round running back selections. But
yes,
the running back coach absolutely loves James. And CMC and my guy Guerrero both have, huge injury history. Guerrero should be the number 2 and a guy to target late in drafts, but his injury history is long. And you get in this system, if James became the starter here, he would be ranked, weekly as maybe a top 12 back that week. So here's a guy absolutely needs to be on everyone's radar as the likely new number 3 back in San Francisco.
No, it's good you're just pointing him out because, again, you got to scroll down the consensus ranks to get he's at running back 79 right now, right? 78, 79. Certainly someone that should be on the radar. He's in the same zip code as guys like Will Shipley, Miles Sanders, Ty Johnson. Obviously, James has more upside if something happens in that backfield than if those guys do. Let's go do a very buzzy rookie. That is Jaden Blue of the Dallas Cowboys.
He only needs to beat out Williams and Miles Sanders. Blue clearly has upside. That said, he's also 195 pounds with only 214 career rush attempts, 5th-round pick, and a serious fumbling problem. He's fumbled the ball once every 30 touches, including kickoffs. So it's likely, sorry, producer Colin, but Dallas still needs a true RB1 and a wide receiver, too. Both of those still need to be filled. But Blue, I mean, with only those guys to beat in the depth chart, he simply has to be on the fantasy radar, along with Brashard Smith. I'll just throw in there. Kansas City's backfield looks really crowded on paper, but none are great options, especially if Pacheco doesn't return to health. So Brashard Smith and Jaden Blue are absolutely two fantasy backs that could quickly become fantasy starters if injuries strike.
Just Jaden Blue, man. Like, what are the Cowboys doing in the backfield, man? What is happening? Javonte Williams just the starting running back there? I mean, what are we talking about?
That's ugly.
Deuce Vaughn's still in the mix. Like, I mean, it's wild that we came away and like Jaden Blue could be good. I don't know. I'm not out on Jaden Blue by any means. I'm just shocked that was the only draft addition that they made. And I like their draft. I'm not saying like, oh, you should have taken this guy over. Like, I like what they did in the draft. I like the Tyler Booker pick. Getting some of the guys they did where they got them, totally defensible, really good, solid stuff. It's just, I'm shocked that Jaden Blue is the only player added to a running back room that is led by Javonte Williams, the consensus running back 41. And then just look at these other receivers here. It's Jonathan Mingo. It's Jalen Tolbert. Like, I don't know, man. I said all offseason that with the right additions, I could get myself very excited about Brian Schottenheimer and some of the things he's talked about, adding in new wrinkles to this offense, but keeping some of the stuff that Dak Prescott really liked, who's coming back to health this year. And I'm really intrigued by what this offensive line could be. But not only did they just not add big names, they basically didn't add any real needle moving names, unless Jaden Blue is just a 5th-round revelation. So I still come away from that part of the Cowboys offseason pretty shocked.
Yeah, I had optimism Javonte Williams could bounce back last season, his second year removed from that multi-ligament surgery, but it just didn't happen, and it doesn't seem like it's going to happen with him. So pessimistic on his ability to bounce back in a tougher environment. He was in a great situation in Denver last year. So all this means is that we'll talk about CeeDee Lamb a little later, but he's just going to get all the targets, and he's going to put up a monster statistical year.
Since you mentioned Brashard Smith, worth noting that he was Jordan Reed's favorite, one of his favorite running backs in the class. Sleeper that he noted, SMU product when he came on the show for Mock Draft Monday. Obviously, Jordan Reed's really good at scouting that running back position. And yeah, I mean, you said it's like crowded in Kansas City's backfield. I mean, it's crowded with a lot of guys that don't have a lot of pedigree. Isaiah Pacheco is a former 7th-round pick. Kareem Hunt is somehow back on this roster. Your guy Elijah Mitchell is here. He was a former UDFA was he UDFA day through draft pick? I don't know. But he was a guy
always hurt.
Always hurt, of course. He was hurt last year in San Francisco when there was opportunity to play. Carson Steele's still kicking around here. So it's not the craziest thing to think a 7th-rounder could make an impact for the Kansas City Chiefs because their current starter is a former 7th-round pick on a rookie contract in Isaiah Pacheco, who, man, Pacheco was just brutal last year. Sub 3 yards per carry on 13 rush attempts in the postseason. Like, it wasn't as if, oh, man, he started off slow, but once he was there, like once he got back, he was running hot. Actually, the longer he played, the less production he offered the Kansas City Chiefs. So I really don't know what the hell to make of Pacheco this year. And, again, that sort of chaos does create opportunity potentially for a guy like Brashard Smith.
And Smith saw a lot of action in the screen game and receiving in college. Mitchell literally is the most injury-prone player in the league. Hunt's 29 years old. Pacheco was losing work to Hunt last time we saw him. Maybe the offseason he returns with a healed leg. I'll talk more about him later. I think his ADP is too high, Pacheco. So, yeah, Carson Steele, as much as me and Nate Tice wanted him to be a running back, didn't look like that's the case. So I think Smith is, absolutely a flyer to emerge in a backfield without any great players in Kansas City.
All right, we are going to take our first break. We come back, we will talk through the rookie pass catchers and where Dalton is higher than consensus right after this. All right, we are back. Let's talk through some pass catchers, Dalton, where you are higher than consensus on some of these rookies. And let's start with Travis Hunter, Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver.
Hey, you just recorded one of the best perception profiles ever. So you tell me, Harmon. A part of my take here is based off you. He did that while attending 0 offensive meetings in college. I mean, that is just truly insane. Obviously, Brian Thomas Jr. is emerged as the alpha in Jacksonville, but targets are wide open afterward. Their GM said Hunter will start with a heavy dose on offense. Coach Liam Cohen said Hunter is an offensive player first. The math says Malik Neighbors would have still been a top 20 fantasy wideout last year, even if his route share dropped to 75%. And Hunter, to me, looks like another special talent, only with a better quarterback. So I'm ranking Hunter over Tet this year and Dynasty. I'm all in, man. He's going to be a fun player to follow, and you tell me how off base I am here, because you did the watch the tape more than I have. But look at that green on that route tree, beautiful thing. Again, while not attending offensive meetings, I know it's tricky. How's he going to do it with two positions? But I think he's going to emerge his offense is going to be his main one, and he's going to be a fantasy force right away.
Yeah, I think that consensus is going to catch up with you on this one, and I think he will, like, again, at any moment now, he could be around that wide receiver 30 mark, which is, by the way, I think the appropriate place to draft him. Now, from a dynasty perspective, I said this on the podcast with Nate, I would take him with the 2nd overall pick in a dynasty rookie draft. I do think that him and McMillan are in the same tier from a dynasty perspective. Like, he's also, to me, in a one quarterback league, Tetro McMillan is clearly a top 4 pick in a one quarterback league. So he's right up there. And I think they're actually going to be close. Like, their tags are going to be close to each other from a dynasty rankings, a redraft rankings perspective as well. But man, Hunter is just so good. And yeah, he's going to be started on the offensive side of the football. And I think what's going to be really interesting is just how much, when he's on the field, I imagine his targets per route run, like targets per snap, is going to be very high. Because I think he will be designed and I'm not like screens and stuff like that. That's one thing, but just him like moving around the formation, he's going to be designed as the guy that's going to get the football. I think what's really also fascinating to consider is, like, we're looking at, if you're watching on YouTube right now, you're seeing the current offensive depth chart for the Jacksonville Jaguars. You know, who is Travis Hunter, the slot wide receiver, or is Brian Thomas Jr. take more snaps in the slot? If I had to guess, I would say that Hunter probably takes more slot snaps than BTJ. Just from a frame perspective, he fits better as an interior player. In 2023 for the Colorado Buffaloes, he was a heavy slot player, but then in his reception perception sample from 2024, he took more snaps outside than any other player I charted last year from a percentage standpoint. So I just really don't know. And Liam Cohen's talked about, hey, Brian Thomas Jr. running routes from the slot. Like, we didn't see him do that much at LSU, but he was really good at doing that as a rookie, like running choice routes and things like that. You know, De'Ami Brown fits as a nice, sacrificial X receiver who can do a little bit more than that. So maybe neither of these guys takes a bunch of snaps at X, but I actually think that's the key to sort of unlocking how the targets get distributed here and who gets kind of the quote layup looks in this offense. I will say this, Dalton, did Travis Hunter being drafted 2nd overall, I know that at this point we've seen Brian Thomas Jr. do it in the NFL, and I love Brian Thomas Jr. I still think he will be the one on this team, certainly this year. But I've been kind of shocked that some people balk at you even asking the question. Travis Hunter was drafted 2nd overall. Okay. I know Brian Thomas Jr. from an efficiency standpoint, from a production standpoint, had a really, really good year where he dominated targets down the stretch because not just because, but partially because everybody else got hurt on that team. Literally every other relevant pass catcher was out. Kirk, Ingram, even damn Gabe Davis was not playing down the stretch. And he thumped the Raiders, the Titans twice, a floundering Jets team, and the Colts to end the season. Do you give any? My question here? I'm getting to a point. Did Travis Hunter being drafted second overall make you put like any pause on ranking Brian Thomas Jr. as a top 5, 6, 7 wide receiver this year?
All right, so we also had Mac Jones throwing to him for some of those games, and Jacksonville lost Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, one of the most vacated targets in the offseason. So yes, Hunter.
Very fair.
How I'm looking at it is no, but if I personally couldn't decide between Neighbors and BTJ, and I use that as a tiebreaker, how about that? So, but I still have them both ranked ahead of Nico Collins and Puka Nacua after adding Adams. So I'm in on Neighbors and BTJ big time on both. And ideally, they don't draft Hunter number 2 overall if you have BTJ, but I still think it's just like a tiebreaker versus Neighbors for me. I'm still aggressively drafting him given the vacated targets and the fact that he's a beast. He's a beast. But I think both are going to be heavily used. Like you said, even if Hunter's not out there as much, he's going to be, designed targets. In a super flex dynasty startup, I'm taking Hunter number 2 overall. He had a 5th round quarterback throwing to him. Harmon. I mean, Sanders was drafted in the 5th round, not top 5. So can we reevaluate that now, looking at him as a prospect? I mean, it's interesting. I think he's going to be definitely one of the more intriguing rookies to come in the league for any time, frankly.
We're definitely putting a lot on Trevor Lawrence here, by the way, like to support a top 10 receiver and a guy that, we are hoping outkicks a wide receiver 30, whatever ADP if we're taking him there. So I think he can do it. I think Liam Cohen can get this all together from an offensive perspective, but just, I don't know. This is going to be an ongoing conversation. Like I'm still in on Brian Thomas Jr. I'm not fading him where he's going right now. I probably do have guys like Puka Nacua and Nico Collins ahead of both Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., but that's up for debate. Those guys are in the same tier to me. It's not like you can really go wrong one way or another, but just wanted to get your thoughts on that because I'm not really sure where I stand at this point. But let's go to your next rookie here, which is Matthew Golden, who you're actually lower than consensus on.
Yeah, Packers grabbed a first-round wide receiver for the first time since 2002. Christian Watson could be out for 2025. Josh Jacobs requested the team acquire a true wide receiver 1. Maybe they were also just trolling Aaron Rodgers. But the question is, did they acquire a true wide receiver 1 here with their pick? Golden is extremely fast. He does have the first-round draft capital. But Green Bay is just incredibly crowded at wide receiver, even without Watson. They used another pick on Savion Williams in the 3rd round. Packers were last in pass rate last season while utilizing 4 wide receivers the most. So yeah, he could see the field, but the targets are going to be tough. He's a polarizing prospect. And maybe I'm letting Scott Barrett form my opinion too much. But man, it looks like Golden did most of his damage over the final 4 games last season when Isaiah Bond was hurt. His career yards per route run was in the 7th percentile. He ranked dead last in career targets per route run among this year's top wide receiver draft prospects. He also had a huge drop problem. I expect some spike weeks in best ball, but I'm keeping my expectations checked for this year. But you follow these receivers more than me. Tell me why I'm wrong, Harmon.
I don't necessarily think this wide receiver 75 is very, very low. What's the highest Green Bay? I'm looking at your rankings right now. The highest receiver you have ranked there is Jaden Reed, wide receiver 42. I'm with you having Jaden Reed as the highest ranked wide receiver. I'm probably a little bit higher. But you still got like Wicks and Dobbs and all these guys ahead of Golden. I'm definitely higher on Golden than that, but. Just, I don't know, man. He's not a wide receiver 1. There's no question about that. But I do think he brings what they needed to the mix here in terms of the speed and verticality. But I also think that a lot of what I said about Golden all throughout the process is that's going to be more tactically useful to the Packers than it is useful to your fantasy teams. Like he's going to get a guy out of the box. He's going to give them just overall more just verticality and spread things out a little bit. But I'm not necessarily convinced that he's going to put up like immediate rookie wide receiver 1 numbers or something like that. But I don't know. Wide receiver 75 is very, very low.
Yeah, maybe I need to reevaluate that one. But it's interesting how much he put up the production in those 4 games without Isaiah Bond before. He was a disaster the first through week 14. But you follow him, and maybe you think he's got some upside as a route runner and whatnot. And Green Bay liked him enough to draft him in the first round. So far be it for me to suggest otherwise. So maybe I'll bring him closer to consensus, and maybe it's crazy that I have him over the Dontavian. Should I give up on Wicks? He just cannot catch a football. I mean, he gets so open still. But
I don't want to give up on Wicks. I'll tell you that. I don't think the team wants to give up on Wicks either. But like, I think they'll still use all these guys. Like, there's definitely a scenario where Matthew Golden averages like 5 targets a game this year and is not that useful for fantasy. So I think there's some, like, you're directionally right with a lot of the stuff you're saying. I just think the ranking is kind of low. But I'm like, who cares? I think for the most part, the analysis that you've got here is dead on in terms of it still might be crowded. They were 32nd in neutral pass rate last year. I see no reason for them to change that. And you know, guys like Jaden Reed are really good football players. Like Dontavian Wicks has his uses if he can catch the football, and obviously Romeo Doubs is a useful player as well. So if he just, like, the bottom line is, if he just replaces what Christian Watson did last year and he stays healthy, he's going to have weeks. Good luck trying to predict when those weeks are going to come for Matthew Golden. And I kind of think that's what they drafted him to do, at least for this year. And then long term, I think they want Golden and Reed to be more of like their clear wide receiver tandem, but that might not happen until, 2026 or 2027. Okay, let's move to your next rookie here, which is my guy, Jack Besh, now of the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, I think he has a chance to be their wide receiver 2 immediately in an offense with Geno Smith. Bowers will obviously command attention. And then, adding Jeanty to mention too, playing indoors. So I just think Besh is going to be, kind of a PPR type, rack him up, maybe old school Hunter Renfrow type in this offense. Not the highest upside, but I do believe, his floor is higher than many of these receivers ranked below him, or above him, I should say.
I think Jack Besh has a chance to be their wide receiver 1 as a rookie.
Yeah.
Wow. And I like Jacoby Myers. I'm a long-term fan of Jacoby Myers, but from a production standpoint, Myers ran 33. He was outside for the vast majority of his snaps. He was only 33% snaps in the slot last year. I think Besh is, and that makes sense too. Like, Myers is a really good route runner who beats man coverage. Like, he's not just a slot only, pop gun type of receiver. He's got some size to him as well. Besh obviously has size, and he played really well outside. He was an awesome press man beater and reception perception, but he probably does translate more to a big slot receiver role. I keep bringing up the Jordan Matthews season with Chip Kelly early on in his Eagles tenure. Jordan Matthews playing tight end now. Like, obviously Jack Besh has a history playing a little bit tight end, but I think him and Bowers can do a lot of fun stuff together over the middle of the field. And I think I just have a feeling that Besh will be running more of the layup routes than Jacoby Myers will. So I'm not against Jacoby Myers this year at all, but I think we could see actually Besh run more slot reps than Jacoby Myers, which to me would make him the more preferred target from a fantasy angle.
Interesting. Yeah, Myers does appear to be one of the more underrated receivers in the league, but yeah, even more so bullish than after listening to you. I think this offense could be sneaky good. They will be run heavy, but Besh is going to have an opportunity right away. And if he emerges even beating out Myers for that spot, he'll be huge pick compared to where his ADP is right now. Yeah,
I have Jack Besh ranked in the 40s. At wide
wow!
receiver,
okay,
so
I'm way too low. Yeah, all right, I like it. I love it. Nice. Okay,
I'm probably too high though. I probably might have a little bit of rookie fever. Like, there are definitely some guys. I don't know, man. Wide receivers really. This is our last receiver, so I just want to get this point on the record because I've been thinking about it a lot. Wide receiver is really interesting right now. It always is. It's always interesting to me, of course, but it's interesting every year. But I think this year there are definitely guys that. I mean, shoot, I'm looking at the wide receiver 40s in my rankings right now. And I mean, there are definitely some rookies that I have there, but there are guys like Michael Pittman. There are guys like Jacoby Myers, Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings. I have all the 49ers receivers just kind of clumped up and hedged, but like, there's a lot of guys that could have really good roles. Khalil Shakir is in that range for me. Like, there's interesting guys there, but I think the more important question to ask about wide receiver this year, and this sort of dovetails back to our Brian Thomas Jr. point, and I actually want to do a whole episode on the podcast about this later in the offseason. Just asking, like, what if we're wrong about who are the best wide receivers in the NFL? What if we're wrong about, some of the younger guys that we've already launched up into the elite tier? Look, like, nobody argues Chase, Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, those guys. I think they should all be up there, but I don't know. I think the talent gap is a little closer at wide receiver with some of these guys, some of the younger second and third year players, than maybe early rankings are giving them credit for. So I don't know. I just wanted to get that on the record, Dalton, because there haven't been a ton of guys that have aged out just yet, and there's still some really interesting under the radar players. But to me, wide receiver, 7 to 30. There's a tight talent gap, at least to me there. Opportunity, maybe not so, but talent gap certainly there. It's pretty tight in that range.
Well, I'm requesting another wide receiver centric pod like we did last summer too. I have a lot to discuss with you and a lot of ranks I'm debating. So let's go deep on some wide receivers later.
Okay, cool. Let's put a pin in that discussion, and let's wrap with the 2 rookie tight ends here. Which, Dalton, you are behind consensus on both Colson Loveland and Tyler Warren. I'm probably not going to give you much pushback on Tyler Warren. If people have listened to this podcast, they know I did not like that pick. So talk me through Colson Loveland, why you're a little lower on him.
Normally, I'm after the more upside young guys, but and maybe I'll change come August. But these just don't look like great situations. Obviously, Steichen can scheme up Warren, but the quarterback issues there is an issue. Not to mention the wide receiver depth. Loveland, great pedigree, but I mean Cole Kmet is still there. DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, and Luther Burden now. Caleb Williams still has major questions. I understand the new staff should help him. But rookie tight ends typically, historically take a while, not right as rookies. I know a couple of recent examples have bucked that trend, but it's a position that usually takes longer to translate into the pros. And he has Cole Kmet ahead of him in an offense with a bunch of mouths to feed and a question mark at quarterback. So, I mean, I get a tight end 15, 20, whatever, not a big deal. But one other aspect I want to mention here, I'm not going to sit here and say that tight end is deep because it never is. But if you look at rankings 13 to 30 or whatever, there's going to be a few that are guaranteed to emerge there. And I think you're fine if you if you don't get Bowers or McBride. I think you can wait, into the double digit rounds and take 2 or 3 of these guys and hopefully one of them emerges. Because again, that tier from Dalton Kincaid to Taysom Hill is about 17 players on my list, and I feel like they're all pretty close. And that includes Loveland and Warren. I have a couple other guys I just like more. We'll talk about Brenton Strange. But it's mainly the situations where these rookies found themselves in year one.
Yeah, I get why Colson Loveland is 15 and Tyler Warren is 16 among the tight ends, just because. And if you look at Fantasy Pros consensus rankings, they're at the bottom of that tier. Which, yeah, if you're at the end of that tier, just take the rookies on the upside of the unknown. Again, the next guys are Hunter Henry, Kyle Pitts, like Zach Ertz, Pat Freiermuth, Isaiah Likely. Maybe you could squint at Likely and say he's got. I think he actually probably does have the upside to be in that tier. But regardless, I don't know. I mean, why not just take the shot on those guys if you are looking at that point at the tight end position? So I don't hate it though. Those guys are not priority draft targets to me, and I do think like Warren. He might get a lot of schemed up looks, but why? I mean, Josh Downs should get a lot of schemed up looks. They can't just completely ignore Michael Pittman. It's really tough to make the math work on any of these Colts pass catchers. And same, honestly, with the Bears. Like the Bears are super crowded, and rookie tight ends take time. So Colson Loveland might not just walk into like a 50 plus catch role in year one.
Not great for Odunze either, my guy in Dynasty. I tried to trade away. I mean, Burden and Loveland getting drafted there by the new staff. I mean, not ideal at all by any means. Or DJ Moore.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's a lot more crowded, but we'll see how much year one impact those guys can make because Burden is certainly transitioning into more of like an NFL receiver role, but I do really like that pick, and the more I've thought about it, the more I think that is we're putting DJ Moore on notice a little bit with this Luther Burden pick because their skill sets are very, very similar. So interested to see how that one works out over the course of the summer, but we're going to take our last break. When we come back, we'll talk through some veterans who have maybe been impacted or not impacted by what teams did in the NFL draft right after this. All right, we're back. Dalton, let's talk through, I think we've got 5 veterans here to hit on that you are higher on than consensus here. Let's start with, all the way at the top of rankings, wide receiver CeeDee Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, not a huge discrepancy, but when we're talking about a first-round pick, these obviously matter the most. His ECR is a wide receiver 3. I have him as my wide receiver 2. And I'm closer to moving him to my wide receiver 1 than I am number 3. The Cowboys made 9 draft picks. None of them were at wide receiver. Their depth chart after CeeDee Lamb is Jalen Tolbert, Jonathan Mingo, Jalen Brooks, Kavonte Turpin, Ryan Flournoy. CeeDee Lamb has the most PPR points per game among all wide receivers since 2003, and he's obviously dealt with QB injuries over that time. I think he could approach 200 targets this season. He's 1 year removed from 135 catches, 1,750 yards, and 12 TDs. He's, half a year older than Chase. Indoors with no other players on offense at all. I mean, the only thing is Jake Ferguson is either number 2, pass catcher option. CeeDee Lamb absolutely has an argument to be the number 1 overall fantasy pick, especially in PPR leagues.
Yeah, I love this. It's at least like a variable we've got to consider. Like, who is JJ McCarthy? I'm generally confident in McCarthy, and obviously the experiment of what he will be for Minnesota. I think they can. I trust. I just trust Kevin O'Connell. Like, kind of period, end of story there. But nevertheless, like, it's a new starting quarterback. Obviously, Justin Jefferson's been productive with quarterbacks who should be much worse than JJ McCarthy is, but we've just never seen him play yet. It's a new variable there, and if you're just kind of like against that, I don't know. But I mean, they could still add Amari Cooper. I've made jokes about that, and then I think that might actually happen. But regardless, even if Amari Cooper's on the team, like, I still think that CeeDee Lamb should comfortably clear like 160 targets. This is the type of situation too where it's like, who else are they going to throw to? It's less about that. It's more, why would they throw to other guys when they have CeeDee Lamb there? And considering who some of those other names are, he is good enough to handle like 170, 180 target season.
And thank you for making the point I should have made, ranking him over Justin Jefferson for the JJ McCarthy reason, just because, we don't know. The unknown at the quarterback there is definitely enough for me to move Lamb and his looking at so many targets ahead of him.
Let's get to your next player here. This one's interesting. I mentioned him earlier. Bo Nix, quarterback, Denver Broncos. You are higher than the consensus ranking of quarterback 8 on Bo Nix.
Yeah, there's a big 5, it seems like, when it comes to the fantasy QBs, the 4 runners, and then Joe Burrow coming off such a monster year. But Nix is my QB 6. I saw you took him over Patrick Mahomes, I believe, in our mock, and I agree with that. I rank him as such. Nix started his career 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions over his first 4 games as a pro, was fantasy's QB 6 from week 5 on, when he averaged more fantasy points than even Jaden Daniels. I mean, this is just the fantasy profile we want. He piled up the 5th most rush attempts among quarterbacks with the 7th most passes in the red zone. Finished QB 6 as a rookie in expected fantasy points, ahead of Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Nix was slow played as a rookie. Like, he rarely threw it downfield the first half of the year. But over the final 8 games, 21 TDs, 6 interceptions, 7.4 YPA. He played the final 6 games with a fracture in his back. Nick suffered the 3rd fewest EPA loss from sacks per dropback as a rookie. He's like genuinely impressive. So yeah, he's my QB 6, and I really like his floor, just given the rushing ability. Year 2, he may even improve and really break out. So yeah, Bo Nix is a great QB to target.
Yeah, not only that, man, like, I really like the way this Denver Broncos offense is coming together. Courtland Sutton is a guy that he's probably best as a 2, but you can get away with him as your number 1. They found the right buttons to push with Marvin Mims last year, who, like, they would just flip the ball out to him from the backfield, screens, designed stuff, and he would just pick up yards after the catch. He's got a lot of speed in the open field. He's like a former, obviously, Pro Bowl kick returner. You love him getting into space like that. Again, Pat Bryant, I think, could compete with Devon Vele, maybe even beat out Devon Vele. Probably has a little bit more upside in that sort of Tim Patrick-esque role. RJ Harvey's going to make the run game better. Like, it's kind of a miracle what the run game was productive in terms of like success rate and they like moved the ball with the run game, but they got no production from their running backs. Nobody was scared of that running game. So now you have Harvey there adding actual juice in the backfield. And again, as an outlet receiver, Javonte Williams was like one of the most targeted running backs in the league last year. And you wouldn't know it because he never made a play. Like, RJ Harvey's going to make plays. And then on top of that, Bo Nix can run. So yeah, to me, like, man, I think he's much closer to quarterback 5 than he is quarterback 8 is Bo Nix. And if I don't get, and I want to get Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels in my drafts. If I don't, I'm comfortable bypassing on Jalen Hurts or Joe Burrow where he's going. All respect in the world to Baker Mayfield, but he's QB 6 right now. I'm much more comfortable passing up any of those guys and waiting a little bit to get a guy like Bo Nix, who, man, I just think he is one of the better bets in fantasy this year. Like if you were comfortable taking Kyler Murray where he was going last year, I think you should probably be comfortable taking Bo Nix in that same range because he offers the rushing floor and ceiling. And I think this is just a much better and well-constructed offense in Denver than what we saw in Arizona last year.
Yeah, as we mentioned before, terrific offensive line in Denver. Great scheme, which is just so huge, man. The scheme there. Tampa Bay was impressive last year, and Denver. I mean, Peyton knows what he's doing, and Nix will be the beneficiary. So, yeah, I'm with you there. QB6, but I'm probably closer to, I'd be more surprised if he falls outside the top 10 than if he's not a top 5 quarterback this year.
Yeah, probably, again, my favorite sort of later round guy, not a late round pick, but later round pick at the quarterback position. Let's go to another guy who will be a later round quarterback pick. And shockingly, Dalton, this has got to be probably like the 5th time in your career you are higher than consensus on Justin Fields, now quarterbacking the New York Jets.
It's just these running quarterbacks. I mean, Fields was fantasy's QB7 through 6 weeks last season, sandwiched between Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. He put up those stats while learning a new system, and he was playing incredibly conservatively. Do you remember how conservative that Pittsburgh offense was? He had 5 touchdown passes and 1 interception over those 6 games he started. But still, Pittsburgh opponents only averaged 14.3 points in that span. So it was just like completely, defensive struggles. Fields has his warts as a passer, but he's a top 10 fantasy QB when starting, given his rushing ability. One of only 3 QBs in NFL history to average at least 50 rushing yards per game. That number is actually 54.9 when starting. Fields has been the QB5, the QB9, the QB7 in fantasy points per game over the last 3 seasons. There's only 14-year vet Tyrod Taylor behind him on the Jets depth chart. He's used to playing outdoors and in poor weather. Now he gets to throw to his old teammate Garrett Wilson. The Jets' new offensive coordinator, for what it's worth, is coming from Ben Johnson's coaching tree. So I get it. Fields may not help the Jets win a ton of games, or he may, but for fantasy, he's just going to run and pay the fantasy bills. He's a top 10 fantasy QB.
And it's obvious this team wants to establish the run. Defensive head coach Aaron Glenn has highlighted the fact that they have 3 capable backs, which is interesting when it comes to Breece Hall. You look at the other pass catchers, it's Josh Reynolds, it's Allen Lazard, it's rookie tight end Mason Taylor. I think the ideal version of this offense from a fantasy perspective is, they run the ball a ton. Their run game is good. Justin Fields is a big part of that run game, and they give Garrett Wilson like 30 to 33% of the passing targets. All that's very possible. We'll see what type of season that ends up for Garrett Wilson, but he's one of these guys where are we sure? We sure that some of these guys that are going ahead of him in fantasy rankings are better than him? Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. Maybe this is just not a good situation for fantasy. I still haven't quite wrapped my head around where I want to rank Garrett Wilson this year, but I will say this for Fields. You mentioned some of the rushing stats. He is second since 2021, the year that he was drafted. He's first in sack rate among quarterbacks, which is still a huge problem for him, but this is probably the best offensive line he's ever played behind. So we'll see if that can we can cut out some of those bad habits. Probably not. But regardless, he's second in yards from scrambles behind only Josh Allen since 2021, which is funny because he hasn't been a consistent starting quarterback. Justin Fields, when he's on the field, he's running, and when he's running, he's giving you fantasy points. It's pretty much just as simple as that.
Yeah, it's not always pretty, but it does pay the fantasy bills. And it looks to me like he's going to get a real shot to just be their starter the whole season. So I think Justin Fields is absolutely a QB to target.
Okay, running back here, Isaiah Pacheco. We mentioned him earlier. He's one of these guys that I'm not quite sure what I want to do with this year, other than I want to take rookie running backs before I'm starting to consider Pacheco. He's the consensus running back 26th. You were much lower at running back 34.
Yeah, this one could just be, I could change in August if he returns and looks healthier. Maybe it's a situation. It was Tony Pollard. He returned from that fractured fibula and just wasn't the same. But the last time we saw Pacheco, he was taking a backseat to Kareem Hunt in an important game. So Pacheco surpassed 50 rushing yards just once since returning from the IR. 0 rushing TDs since week 2. Just comes down to health. He wasn't some high pedigree player to begin with, and now there's crowded but definitely capable of emerging as the number 1 there with Kareem Hunt, Elijah Mitchell, rookie Brashard Smith. But to me, drafting him as a borderline top 25 back after what we just saw from him is a little rich for my blood.
Yeah, it can't be done. You can't do that, in my opinion. Now, I think the thing with Pacheco is, you mentioned it, he was kind of like a good, not great player prior to the injury, which is why, like, sometimes when these day 3 and certainly former seventh round starters give a little runway to somebody else to take the job, they end up losing it. Now, the good thing for Pacheco is, again, the only guy that really took his work last year was Kareem Hunt, who is still on the roster. The Chiefs might just say, hey, we'll take the 3.7 yards that Kareem Hunt gives us literally every time he touches the ball. No more, but no less than 3.7 yards. Maybe they just prefer that again this year as they try to once again sell us on a deep passing game that is yet to materialize. We'll see about that. But I think drafts are going to be very interesting after you get past all those rookies, after you get past guys like Tony Pollard and stuff like that. You're going to have to make decisions between sort of DeAndre Swift, Brian Robinson Jr., Tyron Tracy, and then Isaiah Pacheco, guys who right now are probably the running back 1 on their depth chart. And it's varying degrees of how interested are we in the offense between those players. But basically you're saying, Dalton, that when you get into that tier of players, you're probably going to prefer Swift and Robinson and Tracy and those bets rather than the one you're making on Pacheco.
Yeah, as of now, again, like I said, maybe things change if it proves that last year's problem was simply returning from that fractured fibula and he's back to 100% and he looks way better than the others. But as of right now, yes, there's no way I'm drafting him as a borderline top 25 back. Again, he was taking a backseat to Kareem Hunt last time we saw him, and they're not heavily invested in Pacheco. So get like a high draft pick or anything. So just a little skeptical right now. But again, open to changing my mind given his health.
I would probably prefer Swift and Robinson. I think at the running back position to probably Isaiah Pacheco in that scenario. So, okay, let's go to the last guy here on our list, which is Brenton Strange, the tight end, which, I had to look this up when looking at the outline. Brenton Strange is the consensus tight end 27. What are we talking about here? Since we did that, he's actually moved up to 24. Oh, big whoop. I don't know. Strange did bang me in the fantasy playoffs last year, Dalton, when I tried to use him after he had that one big week. Did not work out for me. But you're saying let that go and be pretty in on Brenton Strange this year.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to come through like the Jonnu Smith late tight end call that you laughed at me at last year. But Strange is in a pretty good position here to emerge. Huge fantasy boost with Evan Ingram moving on to Denver. Ingram owned the 3rd highest target share among tight ends last year. Yes, Travis Hunter enters the picture, but Christian Kirk is also gone. Just to repeat, Jacksonville has a bunch of vacated targets available. Liam Cohen offense. Strange will be more developed as those potential rookies we talked about earlier in his 3rd year in the league. Strange started over a 21-year-old Tyler Warren at Penn State, and I think he's going to be 3rd in the target pecking order on a much improved Jacksonville offense. So yes, we're talking about the number 15 tight end here to end it, but I think Strange is a sleepy sleeper if you're looking for a late tight end flyer.
Oh yeah, he's the right bet to make. 3rd year tight end, 91st percentile broad jump, 82nd percentile vertical jump, 87th percentile 10-yard split according to Mock Draftable is Brenton Strange. This is the right type of athlete you want to bet on at the tight end position. And the rest of the guys on the depth chart, it's Johnny Munt, who follows this coaching staff around when it's like, okay, we want to get in 12 personnel, we bring Johnny Munt on the field. Hunter Long, honestly, same thing. He's that exact type of guy. So there's really no reason why Brenton Strange shouldn't be the leading tight end target getter for whatever that's worth. Again, we're already asking a Trevor Lawrence offense to support Brian Thomas Jr. as a top 10 wide receiver, a wide receiver 1 in fantasy, and Travis Hunter to hopefully outkick that wide receiver 30 ADP. So it's not as if, I don't know, it's not as if Strange has the highest upside in the world, but if Trevor Lawrence takes a leap, if Liam Cohen brings everything that he did from Tampa Bay to Jacksonville, and again, this is the right athletic profile to bet on, I could certainly see Brenton Strange being the tight end sleeper to draft in 2025.
Yeah, Liam Cohen has spoken glowingly of him, and I think he could do a reasonable facsimile of replacing Evan Ingram in the role in that offense. And maybe Hunter helps. Maybe their offense they score more points. I mean, it could.
Yes,
it's great. Have better football players on the field. I mean, they might just score more points this season.
That's what it all comes down to me. Like when we're debating of, oh man, should Brian Thomas Jr. fall down rankings because of Travis Hunter, or what do we do with Travis Hunter? He's a part-time player, this, that, and the other. Like, what about Brenton Strange? What am I doing with him? The reality is, I think the Jacksonville Jaguars, if I'm right about the type of offensive coach that Liam Cohen is, and like, can he just elevate Trevor Lawrence to being what Baker Mayfield's been the last few years? It's funny, people laugh at you now if you say like, oh, Trevor Lawrence, can he be as good as Baker Mayfield? Think about what people were saying about, and me included, I'm putting me in this bucket. We're putting like how we were talking about Baker Mayfield prior to his arrival in Tampa Bay. He was pushed out with aggression of the Carolina Panthers building. The Browns brought in a sex pest in Deshaun Watson and paid him $230 million just to get Baker Mayfield out the door. Like, that's who Baker Mayfield was. Like, right or wrong about those teams' decisions, that's who he was. Can Liam Cohen take Trevor Lawrence and make Baker Mayfield that guy? If he does, or excuse me, can you take Trevor Lawrence and make him that guy, like a Baker Mayfield level quarterback? And all these guys, like Travis Hunter is the player that he should be. The offensive line gets a little bit better after a few additions. I mean, again, this offense has been terrible, poorly designed. They couldn't run the ball. They were not putting a lot of players, other than honestly Brian Thomas Jr. They did use him really well. They haven't used players all that well in this offense. Like, the reality of Jacksonville is if they just score more damn points, everybody can be happy here. And Dalton, I think that they can.
Yeah, no, this could just a huge upgrade in scheme. And what if Hunter is the real deal right away? BTJ year 2. Yeah, this is a situation with has quite a bit of potential. And man, I hope Hunter lives up to this hype, because it really could be exciting.
Oh God, yeah, I can't wait to see Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr. working together. Like I said on a video on YouTube, like, oh, who's the one? Who's the two? Who gives a shit? Like that's my answer. I just want to see these guys play on the football field. All right. That is going to do it for today's show. Dalton, appreciate you doing this, man. It was great to talk ball with you again. It's always great to get where you're higher or lower on players than consensus, because you're really good at this stuff. Tell the people what you're working on right now. Are you still trapped in baseball land, or are you doing some football stuff?
Yeah, I'm actually trapped in baseball land. I do have a fantasy notebook up now where I do a little TV talk too, if you're into that too. But check out The Rehearsal, man. That season 2 is just absolutely insane television. Yeah, I'm in baseball mode now. I'm rooting for my Warriors, but now I'm back in football mode and going to be reappearing on the pods with you, most importantly. But yeah, as far as work, it's just baseball stuff. So you can ignore that, Harmon.
Okay, perfect. I will be ignoring that, but I might check out The Rehearsal. I had not even heard of that until you just mentioned it, so maybe I'll give that a little watch on your recommendation. But regardless, like I said, Andy Barron's is going to join me. He's going to be back on Thursday as we dive into the biggest revelations from our first Yahoo Fantasy staff mock draft of the 2025 fantasy football season. Until then, we are out.